Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Well, it's another day in the continuing saga of the coronavirus. It's Wednesday, March 18th. And before we get into the real subject of this, about evaluating the continuous and ongoing evaluation of situations and people, just touch on a couple of the housekeeping things. Just check the Dow. It's down almost 2,000. Yesterday, somebody came up to me and said, "Well, the market's up $1,000, so I think it's good. I think it's over." No, nope. It hit the stop loss overnight, and then the market opened, and then it continued to go down. So we're down 2,000. This thing is going down and down and down, just like I said it was going to quite a while back. So it's not time to buy anything. It's time to conserve your cash, make every penny count. Remember that every penny you spend now is a penny that you might need later on, and it's a penny you won't have to invest when this thing does hit the bottom. And, I know a lot of people, the market is not for them. That's okay. A lot of people, real estate is not for them. And there's people who are in the stock market who will tell you not to do real estate, and real estate people tell you not to do the stock market, and this is gambling and that's gambling. Hey, life is a gamble. Everything you do is a gamble. But the more you know about it, the less gambling it is. And that's what makes the difference between gambling and investing. So I don't suggest that you take your advice from me, but that's my advice, right? And really, even as we go through hard times, the positive person is going to look at, like we've said, at the opportunities. And although there are going to be lousy situations for a lot of people, and we should feel sorry about that, and we do, and we pray for them. That's no reason for you not to take advantage of opportunities when they avail themselves for the betterment of your family and your future. And there are going to be opportunities at the bottom of this for you to set your family possibly up at the next level that you'd like to. So keep that in mind. On the medical front, talked to a number of people last night and this morning who work at several of the large hospitals in this area. This county, our county, has now been declared a hot zone. I forget how they figure that. A certain number of cases present, and it's now a hot zone. So we've been designated a hot zone. And it's interesting to see the different reactions of people to that. But I've spoken with a number of people that I know at several of the large hospitals, and all I'll say is, and this is kind of what I said, I think, about a week ago, and it's just that it's worse than you think. So, crying out loud, if you don't have to get out, don't get out. It's a great time to do those things around the house that you've been meaning to do and wanting to do, and such. Our it's kind of like one of those situations from my previous life. We said the first one who moves is the one who gets killed, right? I mentioned that in, I think, the first book, The Reversion. Well, maybe not, but if you're not moving, if you're not exposing yourself, you're a lot safer than if you do. So keep that in mind. Our schools shut down here. The governor of Kansas just made a declaration yesterday that all schools in Kansas are to remain closed through the remainder of the school year. Some people are understanding that. Other people are kind of pitching a fit over it. And, a lot of those people that are pitching a fit are not seeing the seriousness of the situation. And I know, it's disappointing. We have graduating seniors that aren't going to, have their graduations and proms and everything like that. But, really, come on. Compared to, a life-threatening situation, these people, I've said often, I think I've said it on here, that there's a lot of people out there that need a real problem to give them perspective, over what they think are problems along the way. And this, I've heard people say something, it's heartbreaking or something like that. Well, um, it might be disappointing, but heartbreaking. This might start to point out the difference between heartbreaking, true heartbreaking, and just disappointment. And it's a chance for some people to start learning how to deal with some disappointment. And I'm sorry, but hey, that's life. Toughen up. And I ran into a guy at the grocery store last week. I was standing in line, and a guy comes up behind me, and I turned around and looked, and he was a little guy, and he was wearing a veteran's cap. The caps that a lot of the vets wear that says, what war they were in and all that. Well, there was something different and special about this cap, and because it said World War II, and you don't see many of those anymore. So I turned and I spoke to him. I told him that my father had served in that war. We got to talking. He had served in the Pacific. My dad had served in Europe. Hey, right out of high school, right? And you go over there, and for 2.5 years, you're slogging around in the mud, and well, we don't need to go into the details of that. But anyway, we got to talking, and this guy was 95 years old, and he was just there getting a couple items, and you could see in his eyes the calmness and a little bit of humor back there, and we chatted for quite a while. And I think, you think that guy was worried? You think that guy was heartbroken? You think that guy was all emotional and bouncing off the walls? And no, because he's seen it. He's lived life. He grew up in the Depression. He went to war when he was a kid, and he has lived a life in what America used to be when it wasn't a bunch of snowflakes. And I tell you what, whatever his future is, it's going to be just fine because of how he's been tempered, and it's time for a little tempering of the rest of our society. So anyway, how people are, the kids are, we're disappointed. All the schools are. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to finish what I was going to say here. A lot of the parents are just blowing up because they don't know what to do. What are they going to do with their kids? Who's going to warehouse their kids? Since there's no school, because obviously it's not the parents' responsibility to take care of their kids, right? Somebody has to do something about this. And isn't that just an indictment of the way that our society has been? These people, and they're not going off the walls yet as much as they're going to, because they still don't understand the seriousness of this situation. They think that it's just some weird thing that now they've got to figure out something to do with their kids, and that's unfair. So when the seriousness of this hits them, they are going to melt like the snowflakes they are. I'm so glad somebody came up with that term snowflake, because it just perfectly describes so many. I wished I'd come up with it. And when they start losing their jobs, which they're going to, they're going to think that this is just, hell coming to breakfast. I even wrote about, and I wrote about this, and it reminded me, because these are people who live very well, right? Very well. 2 incomes, a lot of times 2 high power incomes, best cars, big house, great retirement, trips all over the world all the time. Let me read something that I wrote in the Reversion here, and it's from the character Bill. When he's sitting down, they finally get to Stonemont, and he's sitting at the table talking to Jim and explaining how this all happened. He says, Anne, that's his wife, who was an engineer and who was tuned into this stuff. And didn't I mention yesterday how more often than not, or at least as often, it's the women in the families who were the real driving force of the preparedness, and kudos to you women out there. So anyway, she said, Anne told me something like this could happen. She was starting to get interested in all that preparedness stuff and even had me watch a couple of National Geographic shows about it. I'm afraid I didn't take it very seriously. It seemed like a lot of tinfoil hat stuff to me. So essentially, I was prepared for everything just going along the way it had been. I had insurance, savings, and a retirement plan. Something like this seemed impossible, like science fiction. Well, that's I wrote that in the Reversion, and isn't that the truth? That's exactly what a lot of people are dealing with now, or not quite dealing with, because still a lot of people haven't realized the total impact of this. I'll say something that instead of bouncing off the walls, now my kids they cried when they found out that schools weren't in for the rest of the year, because they love school and they have a lot. They're in a lot of activities, which is one of the reasons that we have stayed in an outer suburb of this area. The schools are just phenomenal, and the opportunities that they have, that you couldn't get them anywhere else. So they're involved in a lot of these, and so when they found out that school wasn't going to be on anymore, they all cried. But pretty soon after that, my oldest, Aiden, 13 years old, came to me, and he had developed on his iPad, and he showed me an entire curriculum for the homeschooling program he thought we should institute. And he had the entire schedule and curriculum, and every person who is teaching what, and he's teaching math and a whole bunch of other things to the kids, and mommy's teaching a bunch of stuff, and I think that I am teaching social studies, preparedness, gardening, and something else. And I was just astounded. I was just so impressed, and I thought, if the schools had just kept going on, that wouldn't have happened. First off, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to step up like that. He wouldn't have had the opportunity to develop a program like that. And then we as a family would not have had an opportunity to actually implement the plan he has come up with at 13 years old. And we are certainly going to. It's an unbelievable opportunity for those of us who see it. Then we talk about, and the whole thing about this was evaluation. I've spent more time talking about these other things than I meant to, as I often do. But somebody in one of the previous videos, and I don't remember who it was, so feel free if you see this to jump on there and say, it was me. But it was one of the people who often makes excellent comments, and some that I really enjoy getting. And he said that these problems were an excellent opportunity to evaluate the people in your group or mag, or whatever it is. And that was an excellent point. This situation, and it'll be even more, we should always be evaluate situations, evaluate people, because just like sports, which they say develops character, and then those of us who say no, it doesn't, it reveals character, right? The character comes, and you see what somebody's about when you see how they involve in activities. The same with emergencies. Emergencies, they can, over time, they can develop character, but at first they're going to reveal character. They are going to reveal talents, they're going to reveal strengths, and they're going to reveal weaknesses. A lot of people out there, they talk a great game, and when it really comes down to it, their game ain't up to their talk, right? And then there's also the other the kind of quiet people that aren't all up trying to lead and act like they know everything, and darn if they aren't some of the steadiest, internally strong people that you've ever seen. Um, so this is an excellent time to evaluate. As we evaluate the continuing situation, use it to evaluate the people that you consider to be a part of your group. You might find that some of those kind of need to be repositioned, right? That if you have somebody who's just their whole program is how this is a I don't know, an effort that comes from Q or what that was, that everybody was following all the time, and this is just all a cover for being able to make mass arrests of the child molesters worldwide, or if it's just to take down the president or whatever, and that's all they can think of, and that their actual preps aren't up to speed. Well, yeah. You know how in the book, how I often have the core at Stonemont sitting around either the dinner table or in the den talking about plans, and each of them having an area of responsibility and sharing with each other what's going on. People, who are kind of wacko, they're not going to have a place at that table, are they? And so you're going to be able to see how people are reacting to this. On the other hand, and then you're going to have people that say, I wish that I had bought that thing that you told me I should buy. Okay, well, okay, they're probably, at least they realize that they should have bought it, right? Okay, but it does say something that they didn't. Okay, but that lesson might turn them into a person who does the next time. Okay. And then there's something I had a really, how should I say? Well, it was a good situation last night. I was talking to a guy who I've known for years, and I love the guy like a brother. And I've tried to get him on board with preparedness for years because I care about him and his family. But he never seemed to really respond to, he listened, and I think he read my books, but he never came back and really, with any kind of energy, talked and really acted like he was into it. And so I'd always kind of felt gosh, I wish this guy would, tune himself up and really get on board, because I don't want him to have a problem. Well, so I thought he was just kind of humoring me, and he'd listen to me, and I would talk because I care about him, but I didn't think he was doing anything about it. Well, last night we talked, and he says, I just want you to know that I'm glad that I listened to you. He says, I have been listening to you, and he told me what his situation was, what his preparedness situation was, what his cash on hand situation was, what his family situation was, and this guy is tightened up. I never knew it. I never knew it was happening. So, but he listened. And he didn't make a bunch of noise about doing it. He just did it. And he is in great shape now. So anyway, this is, you might be surprised. These tough times really show you what people are about. Use those times. Pay attention. And you might find that you're moving those pieces on your chessboard around a little bit, and making some reassignments in your mental plans for the future. So life throws us these things, and without these things, we wouldn't be able to make the improvements that we need to be ready for the next one. This, as I mentioned the other day, Fauci estimated that the virus itself would go into the summer. And as I said, people are going to continue to lose their jobs. I'll tell you one story before I wrap this up. There's a, and I mentioned how so many people are going to be losing their jobs, and the effect this is going to have on the economy. It's going to tank. Well, there are. It's a friend actually of Kelly's sister-in-law, and they're people I've met. They seem like very nice people, as I recall. Um, but I don't know them, and that every time she says, "Do you remember so and so?" I go, "No," and then she'll remind me, and then I go, "Oh yeah, yeah, okay." So they're not people that I know, but she knows. These people were set. They were living an excellent life, land out in the country, big house, horses, all that. They got wiped out because they were carrying too much debt, probably, back in 2008, 2009. And they went, they went from way up to way down. He ended up, he's selling cars, still does, I think. She had 3 jobs. She lost all 3 of those jobs yesterday. Okay. We hope the best. Like for everybody else, we pray for them. But this is going to happen all over. So watch it continue to go. Evaluate every day. Make your steps careful steps. Don't spend any money that you don't have to. Learn the difference between, and I know most of you do, the difference between wanting and needing, and ride this thing out, building and strengthening your family and your groups, and this will be an opportunity that we would not have had otherwise. Okay, I'll leave it at that and sign off and keep throwing in that tag that remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And the way we're preparing now is we're preparing our ability to evaluate and make judgments and make it better and take us into the next phase, whatever that will be, more prepared and more ready to make the best of situations. So you all have a good day, and I'll probably talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.